Hello, everyone. I'm Jean-Claude at Beyond Mystic, and welcome to this War Correspondent special report. My guest is the author of The Rebel Gene, Secret Space and the Future of Humanity. You can find her work, of course, at projectcamelotportal.com. If you haven't already guessed, it's Kerry Cassidy. Kerry, welcome back to the show. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. Just like I've been saying behind the scenes, how crazy today is and how crazy everyone is.
Uh,
so,
I concur, Carrie, and it appears also, judging by the astrology, that it's about to get even crazier. So I'm happy to have you on. We're going to have a beautiful conversation today about all of these crazy energies, where that leads. We're going to talk about, of course, the eclipse madness, the on, off again commentary in the mainstream news, whether it's a bad event or a good event, or whether there's too many conspiracy theorists talking about it and all that stuff. We're going to talk about the war, some current developments also. We're going to go back and look at the Baltimore Bridge. We're going to look at the two camps that are fighting over the narrative on this one right now, perhaps even a third camp. And we're also going to look at the royal flush and revisit here what's happening with all of our friendly royals. Before I do all that, Kerry, I just want to mention we are currently now simulcasting on YouTube and also on Rumble. Let's start the first maybe 5-minute conversation here gently for the YouTube audience. And let's talk about some of these energies. We just saw that NASA posted yesterday that we are also being hit, on top of everything else, we're between the two eclipses here, but we're also being hit by these dangerous solar flares here. So there's a lot of weird energy hitting the planet. Humans are reacting to it. We're seeing people who are crazy get even crazier. How are you dealing right now with these energies? How is this manifesting in your life? And what can we share with the audience members on how maybe best to navigate this? Because we're not out of the woods yet, and it appears it's going to be even more hectic here moving into next week. What are your thoughts on all these crazy energies right now, Carrie?
well, for sure. So, I guess the astrology is getting really crazy. I mean, there was one person who went out on, I forget if I think it might have been Instagram, and saying that the planets aren't where we think they are, that it's not an accurate solar eclipse, that some planets were still in Pisces. I think I talked to Richard Allen Miller right before the show today, and he insists that that person is reading the wrong ephemeris, and that we're actually, all the planets are in Aries, and Aries is I love Aries. I have a moon in Aries, so I'm all good with it. But Aries is very sort of in your face,
Mhm.
and Ram energy, as you can appreciate. And there is also, you may not know this, but in Egypt there is the advent of the Ram, and Ramses, you may know the name. And so what happened is you follow the trajectory of all the kings and so on going through time. And then when Ramses comes along, what they really did, and this comes from my travels with Carmen Balta, who's no longer with us, sadly, but she was a wonderful professor of some, university in Canada, and she also did the pyramid. I think it's called the Pyramid Code, a series of wonderful videos. You can still get that, I think, on Amazon. And I traveled
She
with
was
her.
with
I
you also
interviewed
in
her.
those. She was with you also when you were doing the tours in Egypt a couple years ago.
Yeah,
No.
that's what
Yeah, yeah.
I'm just
Right.
saying. So
Okay. Sorry.
I traveled with her in Egypt
Right.
before I started leading my own tours,
Mhm.
and and we actually did, when they allowed you, we did an interview with her at with the pyramids in the background, believe it or not. So we were that close,
Mhm.
and they've actually mowed down all those houses, sadly, and you can't get that close anymore, and certainly not to do an interview, but anyway, I just wanted to say that one thing she pointed out, and I found fascinating and went into further investigation when I went back to Egypt with my own groups, which is, if you study the temples, what happened was when Ramses came to the fore, he brought the sword, and he's depicted on the temple walls holding a sword up like this, and in one hand, and in the other hand, he has a bag full of severed heads. So a very warlike series of kingships, if you will. I think much more human there was reason to believe that some of the earlier kings were, of course, descendants, possibly Anunnaki human hybrids, and so on. So, but there was a complete change again when Ramses came along. So I'm just bringing that to the fore because we've got the Aries Mars energy coming in spades here around April 8th. And originally, Richard Allen Miller had come on my show like 2 years ago, at which point my website was taken down directly after the interview. And he talked about, he works for Navy intelligence. He openly says so. And he talked about the fact that there was a Carrington-like event that is slated for some time in the future. Now, originally he was saying he had what's called a 3 sigma certainty that it was going to happen this year, by the way, right around this time, literally. And going through having also to do with the astrology that was obviously going to happen. And then he backed off that a year later and said, no, he was wrong. And that it was 2025 or later. So I can't quite pin him down. I don't know why he changed his mind, but it's kind of interesting that now we come creeping up on April 8th and all this stuff is breaking loose and people are going completely crazy. Now, there's one thing that just came to the fore right before I came on the show today, which is something that I think it's Captain K he's got a Telegram channel, and he's a Trumper and often has very good posts on his Telegram channel. But I happened to stumble on one that he had just recently, and I sent it to you. I don't know if you have it on hand there, but I have it here on my desktop if you want me to try to share it.
The one about the secret space program logo?
Yes, the Space Force logo just happens to have the same trajectory as it would appear. Okay, and now I'm not, a geology. I don't even know what you would call that. I don't know how to track exactness as far as this goes, but it looks suspiciously similar in the whole curvature of that logo and what you see on Space Force. And then, of course, this picture was included in what is called the Real Police Chief, his post on upcoming April 8th. And he seems to have some very good white hat information, a completely different take on actually the white hat operation with the bridge. We can get into all of that. And I've interviewed him, and a lot of people, he doesn't do interviews, I guess. From what I understand, he hasn't. I don't know if I might be the only one that's interviewed him. We really hit it off. He's a very lovely man. He's the former police chief of Colorado. So he's not about to go out, I don't think, and sort of smear his own name by telling untruths, right? So he has contacts. I don't think he always gets the truth. I think he gets pretty close.
Right.
I think he definitely has white hat contacts. He's a devoted follower of Trump and so on. So we can get into that, but I just wanted to throw that image up there.
Yeah.
Because is this a coincidence or is something else going on?
Right. We'll get into the Eclipse story here in just a bit. We'll cut off the YouTube feed before you do that. But before we get into that, I wanted to ask you and scroll back a little bit here. You mentioned Doc Ram and having issues with your website. I think the last time I interviewed Rick, I lost a second YouTube channel. So yeah, he's a dangerous guy to have on the show. He says some weird things. We can leave it at that. But going back to what he's saying about the planets and us maybe not understanding where we are at this time, there were a couple of rumors or researchers and ideas that were suggesting that perhaps this solar eclipse on the 8th is not actually a solar eclipse, that it might be either a second sun or another celestial body altogether that we don't know about. Did Rick tell you about that? Anything else you want to share on that before we?
Yes. I
Okay.
mean, if you want me to share it here, I will. I mean, I was planning to talk about it, so that's
Okay,
fine.
so okay.
It's up to you where you want me to share this.
Okay. So hold on then. We'll switch over to Rumble just to be sure. Okay. Thank you for warning me, Kerry. Okay. So what I'll do, guys, if you're still watching now on the YouTube feed, I'm gonna bring that link back down now to the Rumble live feed. So if you want to come and join us there for the No Hold Bars conversation, now is the time. So let's remove